You have questions? America's #1 business coach has answers. It's your Broda from Minnesota. Here's another edition of Ask Clay Anything on the Thrivetime Business Coach Radio Show.
Yes, and yes. Thrive Nation, on today's show, we have a special guest, and his name is Wes. Yeah, that's right, folks. His name is Wes, which kind of rhymes with guest. It's incredible. Wes Carter, how are you, sir?
I'm amazing. How are you?
Well, I'm excited to have you on the show because this is the segment that we call Ask Me Anything, where people can ask me any question. And so I'm going to, Andrew, could you read the question from the Thriver here? I've highlighted on the show notes there in a green for you. Could you read the question from the Thriver?
Oh, pulling it up.
No, Andrew's. Meanwhile, while Andrew's pulling it up here, Wes, I got to ask you, my friend.
This just in.
We've been talking about this a lot. When was the last time that you canceled something that you committed to going to? You know, like representing a client of yours, you had to cancel because you had the sniffles.
Oh, it's been years since I canceled anything for being sick.
You're a Dayquil guy.
Well, yeah, you just got to show up and get it done.
So you a Dayquil guy, or what's your move?
No, I take as little medicine as humanly possible. It's kind of my move.
How do you get through it? What do you do?
I just, bear and grin it.
Okay, it's impressive.
All right.
Yeah.
And
I'm
Andrew,
impressed.
what are you doing today? What are you taking? You taking Dayquil?
I'm taking Dayquil and whatever else the pharmacist gave me.
If it's a daily podcast, you
Funny
have to do it
story.
daily.
Can I share a story from
Share
yesterday?
a funny story, yes.
My partner had a trial that started yesterday.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And him and the other attorneys working on the case were both sick all weekend.
Yep.
But they stuck it out because we don't cancel on clients.
That's right.
They show up to court. They start at 9:30.
Yep.
They start litigating their entire side of the case until about 3:30.
Wow.
Until the judge notices how bad they look because he's so sick
Yeah.
and says, I'm going to pause here. We're going to reschedule this. You're too sick to continue.
You're too sick to continue.
And my attorney says, no, I'm fine.
Your Honor.
I just got allergies. I'm good.
I'm good.
Move,
And
allergies.
Is there a cat in here?
the judge actually made them stop and reset it for a few weeks later because the judge just couldn't bear to watch anymore. But that's how dedicated my people are.
That's how dedicated the Winters and King team is. Now, Andrew, we have a question from a Thriver. What is that question?
All right, so the question is, what does an effective contract for contractors look like?
Now, if the question were asked to me directly, I would say, well, here's a template.
Yeah.
Here's a document that I've paid for in the past, have made by an attorney, and this is what it would look like. And I would show them the actual template. So I wouldn't just talk in circles, and I wouldn't say, hey, I'm not an attorney, but my professional opinion would be. I don't give people broad, charlatan, circular, vague advice when it comes to legal issues. And if I didn't have a template or a best practice document, then I would say call Wes. Why?
Yeah.
Because that's who I call. So, Wes, I want to talk to you about a contract here. Have you seen the sample contract? Did you see that document?
I have.
Okay. So you saw the sample contract, and I just want to go through a few things that I saw that I brought up to the client that said, hey, these are some things that maybe we need to worry about.
Okay.
One, this person is a general contractor, which means that they get paid to remodel homes and to do home construction projects. And I was looking through the contract, and I noticed that there was no agreed-upon final price in this contract.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't see that. I saw the required deposit,
Right.
but I didn't see a final price. Nor did I see a specific end date. Nor did I see a specific start date. And the question from the Thriver was, hey, I agreed to do a deal with this client, and we agreed on the down payment amount, and now they've gone out and bought all of the materials from under me. They didn't ask me first. They bought all the materials, and because I make a little bit of money on those materials, now they've kind of pushed me out of that phase of the project, and this is not what we agreed to in the contract.
Right.
And as I read this contract, I couldn't see anywhere in the contract where it prohibited the consumer from buying their own products or materials, nor do I see an official start time or an official end time, nor do I see an official total price that anyone agreed upon. Were those concern areas for you at all, or what were the biggest concerns that you saw when looking through this contract?
Well, let me start with my legal disclaimer here for our Thrivers that,
Oh, yes.
no matter how much knowledge we drop on you here, that, this is not a substitute for legal advice for your specific situation. So we're going to discuss general issues with the contract, but just know, you don't take this and do it yourself. Go find yourself a good attorney that give advice about your specific situation.
And just for clarity, can you help a Thriver who's in Texas or Missouri or Florida, or what states can you help people in, and what states can you go, can't help you, but I can punt?
Well, a lot of states that we do work in, and depending on what state it is, either we can do it ourselves because we have licensed attorneys, or we can associate with local counsels in some instances. So just if we can't do it, give us a shout. We can point you in the right direction, but we can help a lot of the Thrivers out there.
Okay, so looking through this contract, what kind of concerns did you have, or did you have any concerns? Was it overall a good deal, or was it more of a concern, or what would you think about this?
Well, there's a lot of concerns with the contract, and it's common. People come in my office and they say, hey, I need you to do a contract for this. I don't want it longer than 2 pages.
Got it.
And that's kind of what one of this contract is. It's a couple of pager that someone's tried to be short and sweet with. And the danger there is, as you alluded to, anytime we don't get into details, it leaves it open for us to argue about it later. So, you mentioned the price issue. So with a contractor, you can do a cost-plus contract where, look, I'm going to charge you what my costs are, and then I'm going to make a margin on that, cost plus 10%, cost plus 15%.
So you can do that.
You can do that, but you have to put a lot of frame around that. You can't just say that because this contract doesn't cover – what about out-of-pocket expenses? They didn't even mention that. So what if it's not a material or labor, but –
So what if I, as an example, let's say I'm a builder, and this builder, by the way, is based in Michigan.
Okay.
So let's say they're doing a project for a lake house, and the lake house is 30 minutes from town. 30 minutes from the closest, place where you can, like Grand Lake in Oklahoma. You're on the lake, but if you want to go to a nice restaurant or something, you might have to drive 15, 20 minutes.
Yeah.
So let's say this guy, he's not doing this, but let's just say he did. He has to take all of his guys to get some lunch.
Mm-hmm.
Under this kind of broad agreement, one could say that I bought my guys burritos for lunch, and I marked them up, 30%, because that was a cost I had,
Yeah, or it could go the other way. You could have a legitimate cost. Let's say you have to get a special license or a permit that you didn't anticipate, or you have to rent some equipment that you don't own.
I got to rent a bulldozer.
Right. That's not covered clearly in here. So do you get to mark that up? Do you have to pay that out of your 15%? Any kind of ambiguity or things that are unclear, just open it up for drama to fight about later.
So if you were going to take this contract, and we're going to help the Thriver, we're not going to share this contract with the Thrive Nation. You've seen it, so Andrew's seen it, but we're not going to share this with anybody else. For this Thriver, what else were concerns as you look through it? One is the clarity about the specifics. It seemed like it was pretty broad.
Pretty broad, especially when it relates to cost. There was many times if you're going to do a cost plus, there's a maximum in there somewhere, so everybody knows what they're getting into it for. The schedule of payments is very vague.
Yep.
So, usually there's a lot of language when you're talking about draws and, proof of, I've completed it 25% complete, so now I'm entitled to 25% of the payment. It has to have very specific language. Usually there's an architect that signs off, the bank signing off. I mean, it's just not enough meat on the bone for anyone to read it and understand clearly exactly what the process looks like.
And you've seen our pool construction going on back here.
I have.
Did my wife tell you the name of the pool company? What was the name of the pool company?
Pool Creations.
Pool Creations, right here in Tulsa. And I would just say to anybody out there who's listening, I love Pool Creations. They've got great references. They're doing a great job. But if you were to go out there and look at the pool, what percentage of the pool is, in your mind, what percentage of the pool / man cave / grotto / hot tub / sauna / indoor-outdoor eating area / pool hall / is done in your mind / outdoor kitchen?
40%.
Does it look 40% to you?
Well, that's the problem.
See, that's what I'm saying. To me, it feels like 20%.
Right, but I think, you got to dig a hole. That's got to be like 10% all by itself.
Right.
And then you got to lazy. So that's the problem. Nobody knows. There's no set schedule.
And I'm not just saying this. I love Pool Creations, and they're going to be done right on time, and they're great. But what I'm saying to the listeners out there is they're probably half done, but the deck that they're not building is probably a third done because a lot of that detail work takes forever, the masonry and all that stuff. So, I mean, again, it's so subjective. So you got to put on here, you would put on here detailed. You would say, I'm just making up an example. I'm going to have the deck completed, all the siding completed, and the windows installed as phase 1.
Right.
And you're going to pay me this much for phase 1. And then draw 2, I'm going to have the outdoor kitchen, the sauna installed, and the hot tub. That's phase 3 or whatever, right?
Right. So, and the other thing I noticed in here is that you mentioned the time for completion. How
Yes.
long is this going to take? Well, it says we're going to have it completed timely on or before, let's just say July 31st.
Okay.
Well, as an attorney, I'm thinking, what does that mean? Are we talking about substantial completion? Are we talking about total completion? The punch list is already all knocked out. I mean, most of the time on these contracts, you're talking about substantial completion. I'm going to have the majority of it done, but there may be a window here or a floor here that I have to come back in and fix later.
Have you ever bought your incredible wife a couch, Wes?
I have.
Andrew, have you bought your wife a couch yet?
Not yet.
Let me explain to you how this works.
Got it.
You're going to buy your wife a couch. It's going to be a beautiful couch. Your wife's going to like it. Wes's wife, Darcy, loves it. Vanessa, she loves the couch. Women love the new couch. You go to a place like a Mathis Brothers, you find it. You meet the furniture guy, and whatever kind we don't have in stock, that's what we want. We want to custom get it. So if it's like they have red and blue and doe skin and the hide of a cow and this and that and leather, and no matter what kind you want, you're like, do you have it?
Do you have that in fuchsia?
Right. And no matter what, so you go ahead and get the custom one shipped in. So it ships in. Then the people at the furniture store, they deliver the furniture. Wes, are you following me this far on this?
I've got you.
Have you had furniture guys, do you typically have them deliver it, or do you pick it up yourself and crate it in yourself?
I have the luxury now of letting them deliver it.
So when they deliver it, they move it up to like where they think it's going to go.
Right.
And they would ask, Darcy or Vanessa they would say, where should this go? And most women, this is just my opinion, this is what I've seen, and it's just people that I know, and Wes, maybe we haven't colluded on this, maybe I'm wrong here, but then they'll set it down, and then you're like, well, good. The couch is done. Let's go get a pizza. Let's go for a walk. Let's go something. In about 10 seconds after they leave, the vehicle's far enough to the passwords, your wife or my wife would say, hey, could we move it over there? I want to see what it looks like next to the mirror. And you run out to the front yard screaming, just, come on back, no. And the guys are gone.
Yeah.
They're drove off in the moving truck. And I realize now you who bought the couch and paid for the delivery, now you have to move it. Has that ever happened to you?
That did not happen on my couch, but I will tell you.
A bed?
It's giant pictures.
Really?
Where you're holding them up on the wall.
Okay.
And your wife's like, okay, a little to the left.
Little to the left.
Try it a little higher.
To the right.
And pretty soon your arms
Right.
start to burn.
Right.
And
You're doing
like,
shouldering. Oh, I'm getting
I'm going to
jacked.
drop it and break the whole thing.
Right.
So I understand the concept.
So what happens is you move the stuff around, and even though you and your wife are on the same team,
Yeah.
and you want her to be happy as I want my wife to be happy, they will keep changing their minds about where they want it to be. And then finally they find the perfect place, all is well, and it's good. But imagine that you are doing a deck for a woman or a man. Typically women are the ones hiring people to do home remodeling. It's almost always women. If it's the man who's signing the contract, typically it's a woman who's driving the signing of the contract. And then the man might go, well, I tell you what, Wes, it looks good to me. I mean, partner, let's square up. Now, the wife might come outside, whoa. That veranda over there, the crown molding is not what I wanted. And you're going to go, babe, it looks good to me, right? And then there's that little dispute there. So what kind of language, roughly, and if we have to hire an attorney here to knock this out, but what sort of, should it say upon approval of the customer, then that's when the final payment shall be paid? Should it say upon passing of local inspections? What kind of language would you want to throw in there?
Well, I think there's usually a few different benchmarks to meet. And one, I would avoid, if you're on the contractor side, I would avoid any kind of final approval language because you run into customers you're never going to make happy. So some sort of substantial completion, then I'm entitled to get paid. And then you can do something called retainage, where you can hold back a little small amount until we finish out a punch-out list or we have complete everything.
But there are some people that will never be satisfied.
Right, and I know people who have fought with contractors for years because, well, they find out 6 months later all the windows have condensation, and that's the builder's fault, and so they go back to them.
Or guys like me, the first time I got wood floors installed, I was not aggressive enough to sue people over random things. I don't like to do that kind of thing. I think litigation is a general rule. I try to just discourage that idea.
That's a good rule.
But I had wood floors put in a brand new house we built years ago at 111th and Memorial.
Yeah, I remember that.
And I remember I was trying to buy, Wes. I was trying to buy as much house. We built our first house. I met with different builders, and the ones who could give me the most house for $260,000, we're my kind of guy. I'm like, how much house can you give me? One guy's like, well, how much house do you want? I said, it's bigger than better. I want more space. I'm a big man, big head. I want a big space. So the guy was like, yeah, I'll give you a lot of space. So somehow he was putting together a drawing, I'm not kidding, for like 4,000 square feet for like $260, $250. Huge. And I had like carpet everywhere, wall-to-wall carpet, no fixtures that you would ever want, no granite anywhere. And I was like, oh, yeah. And my wife's going, no, if we're going to build our first house, we're not going to build that.
Yeah.
That's like the Garage Mahal. We want to build the Taj Mahal. What are you thinking here? Come on, man. Well, I never grew up in a home with wood floors. I'd never grown up with wood floors. I never saw wood floors in someone's home, except for a girlfriend I had in high school, like my junior and senior year. Never saw it. Wes, did you grow up in a home with wood floors?
I did. I grew up in a very, very old home.
Oh, the
that
old
had
house.
The original wood floors. Yeah.
Nice. Well, so I wasn't aware that one of the attributes of wood over time that people like is that it actually kind of ages and kind of warps a little bit, and it kind of creaks when you walk. And people actually like that. And I don't understand that, but people like that stuff.
Yeah, I lived in a very old 2-story home, and you could hear
you can't
just
sneak
the,
out of
just
that
the
house.
wind blowing would make the floors upstairs creak.
Yeah, you can't sneak out of that house.
No, none.
So the thing is that when we put in the wood floors, it started to warp a little bit, and I'm immediately going, what in the world? What? We should have gone with carpet. And Vanessa's like, that's part of the deal. You want that to happen. It's just settling. But certain people can never be satisfied. Now, Wes, what else, when you looked at that contract, did you think to yourself, this contract needs to be tighter?
Well, one of the other things I looked at was, we talk about this a lot. If you're going to a contract, you need to have rules how you're going to get divorced. There was no termination provisions for anyone.
So if you're working on the project and you don't like the guy,
right,
there's no way to fire him.
They're just being obstinate, or you're doing a bad job and they want to fire you, or they fire you, and now there's no rules how we're going to handle that. So even though it doesn't say it in here, it doesn't mean the client's going to say, hey, you're fired, don't ever come back. Now what do we do? And there's nothing in the contract about how we handle that.
So also I noticed that it really doesn't define liabilities at all. It doesn't say anything like, if in the event that we burn your property down, this happens. I know with my DJ contracts, even back in the day with my disc jockey company, it said under no, my attorney at the time helped me craft it, but it said under no circumstance, and even if the foreseen liability of this wedding entertainment performance, exceed. It basically explained that even if there was an act of God, Wes, even if like the DJ didn't show up for the wedding, at no point are we liable for more than the total we're charging.
Yes.
And the customer is accepting this as terms for us continuing to offer low prices.
Yeah.
Because a lot of brides would want to sue for emotional injury.
Yeah.
Seriously.
Yeah.
So our contract said, under no circumstance, and even if, acts of God or the DJ doesn't show up, anything, we're only liable up to what you've paid us. And so how we did it was a $150 deposit. The other $450 wasn't due until the night of the wedding. And that's what we did, And but it stated there our liability, and people would sign off on it. What kind of liability should we be putting in a contract like this? We're going to be signing. I mean, this is what it looks to be. This looks to be about a $600,000 home remodel.
Yeah, there should be a lot in here about liability. So one, like you're talking about, limitations of liability.
Oh, limitations.
If I get sued, we have consequential damages, which is kind of your out-of-pocket damages. You have punitive damages, which are supposed to be a penalty for being a bad person.
Right.
And you have all these different kinds of damages, as you're alluding to, infliction of emotional distress and these other damages that you're going to want to say these are the only things that we're going to be liable for. And if you want to put a cap on those, put a cap on those. And then you also have certain legal terms like indemnification where, look, if I get sued for something you do or you get sued for something I do, are we going to pay, how are we going to handle that? And so insurance is another one. Look, I have insurance. Do we need, you have insurance. If your house burns down, that's covered by your insurance company. You can't come double dip and get after me too. There's something it's called subrogation where if your insurance company pays for it, then my insurance kind of doesn't have to pay for it. So you have all these complicated issues.
And that's not in this contract.
None of that's in the contract. The other thing that we get into a lot with and it's tied to liability are warranties, especially with a new home. There's, I think, one sentence in here about warranting materials. Nothing else in here about what about factory warranties? Do they transfer to you? What about warranties that we're doing for our workmanship? What about how long the warranty is? What kind of warranties are we providing? We're not warranting that this is going to be a good use for a discotheque. This is a personal residence.
I don't see in here a hard start date at all.
No hard start date.
I don't see that.
Now, sometimes you can get away with that, but you have to craft it very carefully because all of your other dates then usually come back to some sort of effective date. And so it's very dangerous just to leave that blank or leave that up in the air because this contract could be binding for 10 years and you still haven't started the contract.
Now, most of the contracts I've ever signed for home remodeling, and I've signed quite a few of them, with the pool company recently, which is Pool Creations, a great company. They typically have the company's letterhead on the contract.
Yeah.
And the company's address at the bottom.
Yeah.
And their phone number. Is that a best practice, or is that just something that needs to be done legally? Should you always put your company's website and your physical address and all those kind of things on your contract? Does that matter at all to have that in the contract?
Some of it's just marketing. I mean, putting it on your letterhead with your logo and things like that.
Yeah.
But there are bare necessities. I mean, you have to identify the parties to the contract with a certain degree of specificity. So you need to name the name of the corporation, you know, not you, the individual. You have to be very careful about that. Use the name of your corporation.
Yep.
You know, what state are you incorporated in? What's your business address?
Now, my understanding is you have to put the business address.
Yes.
Okay.
You want to list your business address and make sure that you keep your personal name out of it unless you're doing business as an individual, and that's a whole nother problem.
So you want to list the name of the company, which I see that they did here.
Right. The name of the company.
I do not see a business address. I see what appears to be a P.O. box, which you can get into it. I've seen people in the past, though, get into contracts, and it's like, hey, that's not your legal place of business. That's not where you're actually doing business. It needs to be your legal address. Does that matter? Not matter? What do you think?
Depends on the circumstance. I mean, you don't have to list a street address on a contract.
Should you?
But yes, because a lot of times in contracts, you have to give notices to the other party for certain things.
Yes.
And you want to be very specific about where that notice has to go. So if they give you a 30-day notice of termination, it doesn't go to your mom's home address that you use instead of your business address where you're actually checking your mail, or an old address, or something you only check once every few months. So you need to pay very close attention to what address you're using, and making sure also that it's not used in a way that's deceptive. There's some people will put a P.O. box that's in a separate state where they get mail, and then your customer thinks they're doing business with an in-state business, and it can open up to some liability in that regard as well.
I also, whenever I've signed bigger construction deals, there usually are exhibits attached. So as an example, they would say, instead of it saying on the contract, like, see proposed plan, or plans, see the construction shall be completed, see the plans.
Yes.
It would actually say, see Exhibit A attached, and it would actually attach like a PDF of the actual plans. And I have to initial the plans to state, yet again, that these are the plans I've actually agreed to. So it's not the bait and switch move. I don't see that in here. It says construction drawings, but I don't see where it says see Exhibit A or B or whatever.
Right. Again, we're getting into avoiding drama later on down the road. And what's going to happen is, inevitably, an unscrupulous customer is going to purposely pull out a different drawing.
So they're saying, when you drew this deck, Your Honor, the deck that they built was not the deck that we discussed on the 4th of October. And because I remember everything, I can tell you this right here was not what I said.
I've never seen that drawing in my life. I
never seen it. Don't know what it is.
They never showed that to me. Or I've had cases where people literally take the PDF, edit it to lie.
Nice.
And so it helps favor them in a lawsuit. So by attaching them to the contract, everybody agrees these are the documents we're referencing, and there's no room for arguing around it later.
It all goes back to clarifying all of these variables.
Right.
And we talk about, I've seen you to discuss this in previous deals and previous conversations. I'd like you to educate the listeners about this thing called severability. So talk about what that means and how that applies or doesn't apply to contracts for contractors.
So severability is this concept that if I make a 20-page contract, and at some point later on down the road, a court says that paragraph 11 is illegal or unlawful or doesn't apply for some reason.
So there's 20 points in the contract.
Right. Let's say there's 30 sections.
But point 1 is thrown out.
Point 1's thrown out.
Yeah.
There's a concept in the law that, well, if that fails, the whole contract fails.
Okay.
And usually what you'll see at the end of contract are a lot of general provisions, and one of those is a severability clause that says just because one of these might get overturned or opposed does not negate the effectiveness of the rest of the entire contract.
But you'd want to state that kind of thing in this kind of contract, right?
Right, because without it, someone's going to say, hey, if that's no longer good, then the whole deal's no longer good, and I'm free and clear from everything.
Now, if there's a guy out there who's doing business, and let's say this project is a $600,000 project.
Yeah.
But let's say the average project he does is $100,000. And the average profit on his project is, let's say it's 20%.
Okay.
So the average deal for him is $20,000 profit. How much money would it cost you or an attorney that would be in the Michigan area?
Right.
What would they charge to make a contract like this that would be stone cold lead pipe locked, kind of a locked in, this is the real deal contract. This has all the details, and it's going to be maybe a 3-page, 4-page, but it's going to be tight.
Right.
Everything's in there. We're checking all the boxes. I mean, this right here is a hot contract. How much money would that cost to get made?
There's something probably that
I know you hate to quote because you never want to come in too low. Or
but
too
there's something too to take into account where there kind of are industry standard contracts from an organization called AIA, the American Institute of Architects.
Got it.
Many of these buildings, there's an architect involved that leads it, and they have form contracts for about everything. And a lot of times what happens is someone who practices in an area will take one of those form contracts because the entire industry is used to seeing those, and they'll use one of those as a starting place to modify, customize for your specific situation. So it should actually be lower than starting from scratch. So I'm saying on the low end, you're talking probably 4 or 5 hours worth of work to do, a very involved building contract. And you're looking at $1,500 somewhere in there, going up depending on how much time you have to spend.
But then you can use this over and over and over and over.
Right. Once you get a good template, I mean, you should draft the contract with the thought that I know I'll have to come in and tweak it here and there, but I'm going to use the majority of this over and over, and it's an investment for my business.
I used the same contract for DJ Connection for, I think, over 15,000 weddings.
Yeah.
But I had to pay initially for the one. And the one, why I had to pay for the one, Wes? You know what happened to the...
What happened?
We had this wedding for this sweet lady. It's been far enough in the past I can mention the first name only, but I won't. We'll just mention that her wedding was at the Moose Lodge.
All right.
And it was at 11th and Garnett. The day of her wedding arrives, and I was like 20 years old, 21. I think it was 21. And the phone rings, singular phone, do-do-do-do-do-do-do. She calls. I said, DJ Connection. She says, where is my DJ? And I'm like, oh, well, let me just check, because I never had a DJ ghost me like that. I said, I'm sure he's right around the corner. She's like, we were supposed to be here an hour ago. I waited till the end. I just want to call you because this is a big problem. And so I'm DJing a show, and my show's starting in like 30 minutes, and her wedding starts in an hour. So I called the guy, light him up. He's like, I'm on my way. He keeps saying that, and then he just never showed up. But he said, I'm on my way. Found out he was in the process of conceiving a love child with a girl that he met at Oral Roberts University. True story. So he was in the process of conceiving the love child, which he told me years later. He thought it was funny. That was not funny then or now. But so after her, I found out, and again, I'm, DJing a wedding, and she's like, hey, the guy never showed up. Her dad's an attorney.
It's always fun.
And my contract was definitely not a real contract. It was like, like freecontracts.com or one of these places where you can go and download something where it's, you've seen these template contracts.
I have.
And I thought it was awesome because I paid like maybe $20.
Right.
And he was like, well, I just want you to know, due to emotional distress and the fact that I paid for the wedding, I'm an attorney, so I'm not going to stop going for this. I feel like you owe me $20,000 because that's what we spent on the whole wedding, and you ruined the whole wedding. Literally, you ruined the whole thing. So your name is going to be all over Tulsa. People are going to talk about this, which they did for about 3 or 4 years. But beyond that, you ruined my daughter's wedding. And I want an apology. I want you to come to our house, look her in the face, and apologize and hand me a check. And he's like, if I do that, I'll sign an agreement saying I'm not going to talk about this anymore. But if not, heaven help you. But I'm just like, what? Because I didn't make, $50,000 a year profit at that point.
Right.
And so Vanessa and I worked out an agreement, and I settled for a lot. And I was like, man, that's a lot more than a contract. Because the contracts are like, how much was a contract there, Wes, were you saying?
Oh, you're talking for a venue like this where you're providing a service, you should be able to get one $500, $750, not a whole lot.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I was thinking that contract's a lot, but it ended up being a lot more to not have a contract.
Yeah.
And so this guy, he's doing a $600,000 job right now. And if this deal goes sideways, and we're talking about 20%, I mean, that could be $120,000 profit that we lose because we don't have a tight contract.
Yeah, and like you said, then you never know also how much your attorney's fees are going to be to fight that lawsuit.
Right.
Sometimes those are as much or more than the damages, and you may get stuck paying your attorney's fees, their attorney's fees, and the damages, so you can just jack that number right on up a little higher.
If you're out there today and you have any legal questions at all, this advice does not take the place of having an attorney. What we hope to do here is we hope to provide you the right context, the right details, the right circumstances, the right mixture of business coaching advice and legal feedback from an attorney so that you can make an informed choice as to what to do. We would just encourage you to please do business with a real attorney who knows what they're talking about. And I would encourage you to have an attorney that you use before having litigation, because once you get involved in litigation, it's now too late to find a great attorney. My name's Clay Clark. That's Wes Carter with Winters & King. If you have any legal questions or you'd like to set up a consultation with him, go to wintersking.com. That's wintersking.com. If you have any other questions, please feel free to email us today at info@thrivetimeshow.com. That's info@thrivetimeshow.com. And we like to end each and every show with a boom. And so now without any further ado, 3, 2, 1, boom.